Hi there and welcome. I am Jordan from the blog Home and Motherhood, and today I'll be sharing the second half of my lichen sclerosus story. My first half was covering my childhood, and this part will be covering more my adulthood all the way up to where I am today. Just a reminder, this may be a little bit of a TMI video, so if you're not interested in that, please go ahead and click off. But I'll just get started with where I left off. And that was, I was at the semester school and starting to get that holistic, natural-minded view of taking care of my body. At that time, I had stopped completely taking steroid creams. I did move towards a more natural approach towards my lichen sclerosus, doing the sitz baths, cold compresses, like that sort of thing. I moved back home and graduated high school, started working, and within that time period, I just wasn't very much myself. I wasn't very happy. I was very anxious. I felt sick a lot of the time, not specifically my lichen sclerosus breakouts, but more so like I would get the cold or the stomach flu every other month. And within that time period, with those fluctuations of my immune system, I also had my lichen sclerosus was very present. It wasn't a huge breakout like it had been previously, but something was wrong and it was just very continual for me. And so I knew in the back of my mind that food played a role, and for me, I just thought, oh, it has to be sugar or gluten, and like I was having a lot of coffee, so I would settle the amount that I was eating at that time, and it would seem to make things a little bit better. I would do my sitz baths, and that seemed to help a lot too. Again, I was not doing steroid creams. I chose to steer away from that because I was getting just as much relief, but I started to realize this connection with the ebbs and flow of my immune system and my anxiety really played a role in my lichen sclerosus coming up. So considering that how I was living just wasn't very sustainable to my health and happiness, I chose to take another job. I really enjoyed what I was doing and who I was working with. During that time period, not being anxious, I noticed a great improvement in my lichen sclerosus. I wasn't getting sick all the time. So it would be irritated, but it wasn't like something that was very noticeable to me because, again, my lichen sclerosus was just kind of always present. So I got engaged and married and moved away. When I got married, of course, you're intimate. And I noticed that when I'd be intimate, it was very challenging for me. It would be painful sometimes. And I would notice that when I was intimate, my lichen sclerosus would bother me. It'd be very irritated, almost like it was getting triggered just in those certain spots. And so my lichen sclerosus was coming on quite a bit. So continuing with the story, I switched jobs again, and I ended up being in a very unhealthy environment. It was very much secondhand, but it was not a happy place to be in. I noticed that after a few months of that, my lichen sclerosus was on the verge to a really big breakout. And at least for me, I always kind of knew when I was going to have a really bad breakout. And it had a lot to do with anxiety or just your overall health. And something just was really on the verge. And so I spoke with my husband, and we decided that since we wanted to have a child soon, that it would be best if I stopped working and just focused on myself. And so that's what I did. I stopped working, I stayed home, and with the idea that I was going to get pregnant very soon or hopefully soon. And we did not want to have a very big lichen sclerosus breakout and start my pregnancy that way, just because I thought the hormone fluctuations would really affect my lichen sclerosus. So I became pregnant and we were very excited, and this is the time period where I really had to decide where did I want to give birth? How did I want to prepare my body? Considering my lichen sclerosus, what was the best option for me? Previously, from my OB, I had talked to her about having children before, and I asked will I need to have a C-section? And she basically said possibly, depending on how your lichen sclerosus is looking at that time. And that was really scary to me, and I did not want that for myself. I really wanted to avoid that, give myself the best possibility for having a natural birth. I decided that my ideal situation was to have a home birth with a midwife, with the mindset that fewer interventions and fewer people in your area was just the ideal situation for me, considering my lichen sclerosus and wanting to deliver naturally. So I went to see this midwife and see if she would work with me. At the time, she had not worked with anyone that had lichen sclerosus, something similar, but she was open to working with me. And I made it very clear that if my scars started opening up, which I was very scared of. I wanted an episiotomy. And so we discussed that a little bit, and she was open to doing that, but she did not do episiotomies. Like, she had just had one patient that she did an episiotomy for the first time. So I felt very comfortable having someone that did not use episiotomies like routinely, and would like really give my body a fair chance to deliver naturally. So I had my midwife take a look just so she knew what we were working with and if she would in fact want me as a patient. Right away, she did notice that my skin was discolored. It was more like white and not like that fleshy, supple, like coloration I suppose it's supposed to have. She also obviously like noticed my scars and like my affected areas, and she thought it would be really good for me to go on a high protein diet. And we discussed that at times being intimate was painful for me and like really there was a lack of elasticity. And she suggests that I try to use an epi-no and see a pelvic floor therapist. I didn't really want to see a pelvic floor therapist at the time, and so I chose to use an epi-no. I touched on that in my birth video, but it is awesome if you have lichen sclerosus, especially if being intimate is painful or you're preparing for birth. It just is like a way to help stretch you. It's kind of like the idea of a dilator. So anyways, like she decided yes, she wanted to work with me and like we would see how my lichen sclerosus would do and like how my skin would change over time. Again, my midwife was really great. She never checked your private areas. There was really no need to. So it was like not invasive whatsoever, like through my whole pregnancy, and I had a very healthy pregnancy. My lichen sclerosus didn't really come up for me, maybe just a little bit, but you know, that was very regular for me just to continually have it. And that surprised me. Like I thought my hormone changes would really trigger lichen sclerosus, but it didn't. Okay, so going back, my midwife did want to check me a few weeks before my due date just to see how my skin was doing and like if there had been any improvement in my lichen sclerosus. And she did notice that my skin seemed like that more fleshy, supple color, I guess. And she was very encouraged by that, which again made me really encouraged because I was so scared to deliver. Like I just was very scared that my scars would just all like rip open, and you know, those fears you have when you're pregnant, or just like knowing like what lichen sclerosus can do. But I still communicated that if my scars started opening, I wanted an episiotomy just to avoid further damage in my affected areas. And she thought that was fair. Not that we would like rush into an episiotomy, but like if that's something that I really wanted, and you know, like just to make me have like the most comfort overall, like was the idea. The day my child decided to come, of course I labored all day. My labor was 28 hours, and you know, you have those fears of like what's going to happen with my lichen sclerosus. Is it going to be really bad? Like what's it going to be like after having a baby? But like the contractions are like so consuming that you can't think, or at least I couldn't, too much about what was going to happen, just like being in the moment. But when I got towards the pushing phase, I was on my back, and my midwife suggested like now would be a good time to get in a different position, and I think that, you know, helps your skin open and like just like better for that area overall. And I just said no. Like I was not going to move whatsoever. I was like kind of comfortable in that position. I was scared of moving. Like I was not about to move, and I do not recommend that. I recommend like doing hands and knees or different position, not being on your back, especially like having two experiences now. But anyways, I got to the pushing phase and there would be little progress, you know, baby's coming, but my scars did start opening up a little bit, like going up. And so my midwife asked me like if I'd be okay with the episiotomy. I said yes in the moment. And I just want to say I do not recommend getting an episiotomy with lichen sclerosus. I know everyone's situation is different, but I wish I had not done that. I wish I knew what I know now, like after my second baby, and that is just to prepare your body prior to giving birth, making it more supple, like using epi-no, like all of that. But anyways, I got an episiotomy, and like my episiotomy turned into a bigger tear, as it usually does, you know, but it's so exciting. You have your baby, it doesn't really matter. But I did notice like my lichen sclerosus spots were very sensitive after having a baby, but to my surprise, it did not trigger like a lichen sclerosus breakout. I thought it would, just kind of like having a lot happen in that area, that like things would be pushed overboard, but that was not the case whatsoever. It was more so just recovering from birth, like those areas being like stretched and bothered. But I would say after having like big lichen sclerosus breakouts, like it was not more challenging than those, and I felt very like equipped knowing what to do and how to take care of my body down there after having those experiences. So moving on through my postpartum experience, I was very scared, like terrified to be intimate after having a baby. Like I just knew things would be different, and I knew I had a lot of scar tissue to work through with my lichen sclerosus, my second degree tear. Like I was so scared. So my midwife suggested that I go see the pelvic floor therapist. And at this time I thought I really do need to see someone because I was just so scared. And like I knew I had that tissue to work through. So I decided to go see the pelvic floor therapist, and my experience was amazing. I highly recommend seeing a pelvic floor therapist if you have lichen sclerosus. If you've given birth or not, like they know about lichen sclerosus and are there to help you, which was a big surprise to me. I didn't think that there was like a profession that actually knew about it. So being pleasantly surprised by working with a pelvic floor therapist, I actually learned a lot more about lichen sclerosus. Again, I was diagnosed when I was younger, and at that time there wasn't much knowledge about lichen sclerosus. So I did learn quite a bit more through my pelvic floor therapist, like that it is definitely an autoimmune disorder, and it resides in your gut but presents itself in your affected area. I didn't know that at all. And I felt like everything was going really well. She's helping me work through scar tissue, and I was learning about my body, how to take care of it with lichen sclerosus. And during that time, I had also taken the Everlywell food sensitivity test and was learning about like what foods would bother me and trigger my autoimmune response. And like I said, I had just learned that lichen sclerosus is an autoimmune disorder that resides in your gut. And so I stopped eating certain foods, and that is where my lichen sclerosus story really changed. And I have a whole nother video on like the in-depth, like how that came to be story. So going back to the fear of being intimate and having worked with the pelvic floor therapist, learning about like my body, how to prepare my body, like how to work through scar tissue and like making my skin more elastic, like all of this. Of course, I was intimate with my husband again, and it was really, really great. I know that sounds like really silly to say because of course, like when you're intimate with someone you love, like it's always great, but considering like my lichen sclerosus and my experiences in the past where like being intimate was painful or challenging at times, like that has not happened again. I just want to share that with other women that are having a similar experience or are maybe scared. Like you can absolutely heal your body, and like you can enjoy being with your partner and someone you love and like expressing love in that way without having like the consequences of lichen sclerosus coming up. At least that's been my experience, and I hope that you too have the same experience. Anyways, I became pregnant again, and my second pregnancy, I focused a lot, like all my attention on not tearing this pregnancy, and that was focusing on like the foods I ate, avoiding certain foods, like preparing my body, like in every way I could, like with the Epi-No before having my child. And I highly recommend like preparing your body before like the actual due date, especially if you have had lichen sclerosus in the past. And like mind you, I had a lot of extra scar tissue to work through, like like the second degree tear, like my previous lichen sclerosus tears, and like my lichen sclerosus has not come up at all ever since like I figured out that food thing. And I really hope like other people like pursue that because it has made such a difference in my life, and I hope it does to you as well. So delivering my second child, like I was very pleasantly surprised that I did not tear whatsoever. I will say like when I would do the Epi-No, like I would feel a little bit of like my lichen sclerosus spot would be irritated in one specific spot, and it's like a scar tissue that maybe I couldn't work through all the way. And same thing after I had just delivered, like that one specific spot was like just irritated, like it just got stretched, like but it was not a breakout. And that has been my only experience with lichen sclerosus ever since figuring out like the food triggering my autoimmune response. So that is where I am today. I have not had my lichen sclerosus come up in about 3 years. I really hope this video was helpful to anyone on their lichen sclerosus journey, just to not feel alone, and to have a positive like outlook on lichen sclerosus. Like it does not have to define you or like what you do in your life. Like you can have children, you can have babies, you can love your partner. Like there's so much like lichen sclerosus should not hold you back. And I was watching a Gaia episode, and it was Jim, I think his name is Quick, it's Kwik, and he was saying that like oftentimes like what you struggled with as a child is what your purpose is, and something about that just really spoke to me. And like the thing I struggled with was lichen sclerosus, and I just want to share my story so that hopefully it helps others. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you'd like to see more videos. Again, I wish you the best of luck on your lichen sclerosus journey. I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.